2 Corinthians chapter 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Get to a very familiar passage of Scripture here, but I want to bring out maybe a little more truth out of this area. But 2 Corinthians chapter 5 says, "For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house made with hands, eternal in the heavens." What's he talking about? He's talking about, what is this house, this tabernacle? It's talking about the body. And he's talking about, in the basic sense of the Scripture here, or the basic meaning of it, he's talking about the body. What is that earthly house? It is our body. The tabernacle were dissolved, we would have a building of God. In other words, if you die, you pass away, you get your eternal body, your spiritual body. Jesus, when he came back after his resurrection, he had a new body, a spiritual body. Wasn't the same as the one that he walked the face of the earth, that he was born into or born with, however you want to say. They came back a spiritual body. So that's what Paul's saying. If this earthly house or this tabernacle, which is the body, were dissolved, we have a building, or we have a new tabernacle, he could have said. One made with eternal hands, which is made by God, a spiritual body. No corruption. Over and over in Corinthians it talks about the resurrection and receiving a new body. One that's incorrupt. Not corrupted by the sin or the earthly elements. And he goes on in verse 2, it says, "For when he grown earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our new house, which is from heaven. If so if we didn't have a body, he said we'd be naked." Verse 3. Verse 4 says, "For we are in this tabernacle," talking about the body, "that we that are in this corruptible body do groan, being burdened not for that we would be unclothed," not that we want to get rid of it, but that we would be clothed with a new body. That's what he's talking about. Now he that wrought this self-same thing is God, which also hath given unto us the earnestness of the Spirit. So what's he talking about here? He's talking about resurrection. But let's take it one step further. Okay? Let's make it relevant. How can we make this relevant today, for right now in our lives? All right, let's look at it this way. He's talking about here, he was getting our resurrected, our new body, and the old body passing away. Can anybody want to raise their hand and break that more relevant today? Matt? Lisa? All right, what is he talking about? He's talking about your old life. Do you know that? Do you know that if your old life passes away, he said the old tabernacle passes away. What is a tabernacle? You see, your old body, your life. Well, it's the old life. If your old life passed away, if it were dissolved, well, guess what? God has a new building ready for you. He has a new life ready for you. Are you talking about salvation? Well, if that's applicable to you, if that's where you're at in this life, if you need to get saved, born again, receive the new life, get a new heart, which says that I want to serve God now, I don't want to serve myself any longer, then so be it. Do it. Get on the right path. But here he's talking about how many of us would like our old life to be dissolved? And that's what he said, verse 1. "If this earthly house, for we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, that we have a new building of God, a house made without hands, eternal in the heavens." How many of us know that today? How many of us are confident in the fact that if we have our living, with our old life, if it will pass away, God has a new life ready for us? If we would do like Matthew 6, I think it's Matthew 6, in Jesus said that if you would give up your whole life, that he would give you a better life. And that's what we're talking about here. Do you know that as it's the basics of Christianity, is the foundation of Christianity, that God replaces the old with the new. Do you understand that today, if you will allow God to dissolve your old life, that he says here, he has a building, he has a new life, one made with eternal hands, which is his hands. He's fashioned, he's shaped it in the heavens. Well, eternal hands in heavens, well, that means God. But he has to dissolve the old life first. He has to dissolve it. A lot of us Christians like to live in both worlds, don't we? We like to have the best, we call it the best of both worlds, but one is not necessarily the best. We think it's the best. We think that this old life sometimes can provide the best for us, but no, not so. How many of us think that I want the best of both worlds? You don't get it. Jesus said, it was said that you can't serve two masters. If you have one, if you love one, you'll hate the other. If you hold to one, you'll despise the other. You can't do it. So you can't have two masters. You can't have two lives. As many Christians try to live that two lives, but you can't do it. A kingdom divided itself will fall. So here he says, are you confident of the fact that if you allow God, to dissolve the old tabernacle, to dissolve your old life, that today he has a new life prepared for you? And I'm not just talking about getting saved. That's the beginning if that's where you're at. But today, are you wanting to go on with God? Are you wanting more of God? Are you wanting to more closer walk with Jesus? Are you confident of that fact? It says for verse 2, for we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven. How serious are you about this? How serious are you about Christianity? How serious are you about your relationship with Jesus Christ? How serious are you about wanting to know more of him? How serious are you to wanting to be more like him? Is it an overwhelming desire, such an overwhelming desire that it causes you to groan in spirit? That you long for that? To be clothed with a new life? I know he's talking about resurrection, but making it relevant today, clothed with the new life, clothed with the resurrection power, the resurrection life. Jesus said that life and more abundant life, how desirous are you? Are you groaning within yourself? Do you really desire? Do you really want it? Or are you satisfied with the old tabernacle? Or satisfied with the old life? Or satisfied of trying to live between two worlds? That'll make you groan. Verse 3 says, if so be that being clothed we should not be found naked. You have to be clothed with one or the other. Either you're in this body of this life, this corruptible body, or you're in heaven, in your new body, resurrected body. Let's say that the body made within, the spiritual body. Jesus came back, he had this spiritual body. You got to be one or the other. He says you're not naked. You can't be naked. You can't wear and walk around naked in this life. Guess what happens? They throw you in jail. Come on, that's a joke. Gee whiz. So he said you can't be both. You can't have both lives. You can't live the old life. That's the war that's going on within some Christians. They're still trying to live the old life, and yet they want the new. Or they say they want the new, and they're still living the old, however you want to put it. Verse 4 says, for we that are in this tabernacle do groan, being burdened, not for that we would be unclothed,